I was born in 1980. For the first 15 years of my life, my family lived in Virginia Beach. My mother taught me to swim at a very young age, and we would routinely go to the beach in the warm months. We went almost every day. My mom would lay out and tan, and I would body surf for hours. Her two main rules were to stay where she could see me and never go deeper than chest deep in the water. As anyone that has been in the ocean knows though, tides change, the ocean is unpredictable, and you have to be very aware of your surroundings when swimming. By the summer of my 10th birthday, I was a very experienced and strong swimmer. I never grew tired of going out to body surf, and my mother ended up having to get a job so she couldn't come with me during the week. My next door neighbor often babysat me during the day. One day about late afternoon, my neighbor took her son and I down to the beach to swim, and we went right into the water. The first thing I noticed was it was getting to be high tide, and the surf was a bit rougher than usual. But being a kid, I shrugged it off due to the overconfidence of youth. I was swimming out towards the breaks, then swimming with the waves, and would go with the wave as they would crest, riding them into the shore. The last wave I took that day was a monster wave, and peaked at least 3 feet higher than I expected. I attempted to swim faster to catch the top before it crest, but I failed miserably. The wave and white water grabbed me and slammed me hard right into the ocean floor. The last thing I remember was pure panic as I rolled violently across the ocean floor, getting battered by small rocks and sliced up on the shells. I have no idea how long I was under, but I went unconscious. Next thing I know, I'm just calmly floating in a black abyss. It was blacker than black, and I could not register any physical feeling. I tried to put my hands in front of my face, but there were no hands. There was nothing to move. I was not in my body. I was just consciousness. I just existed in this horribly vast nothingness that seemed like it was everything and nothing all at the same time. It seemed like I was there for an eternity, but I really didn't have any concept of time, or at least a way to keep track of it. I was overwhelmed with sheer terror, crippling anxiety, loneliness like I never felt before or since, and the deepest sadness that was so much more than sadness. I still don't have the proper words to express it. Just when I thought I was going to go completely mad with the pure soul-shattering horror of this new reality, I heard a voice from every direction. It was a boy that sounded like he was about my age. I couldn't see him, and his voice came from everywhere. He told me his name was Christopher, and that everything would be okay. He said I wasn't ready, and I was going back. He asked me to tell my mother he forgave her, and said he loved us. I instantly jolted back into my body. I was coughing up water and laying in the sand, having just been revived via CPR by a lifeguard. The waves dragged me to the bottom, beat me to literal death, and deposited me on the shore. I know that lifeguard brought me back, but I also know he didn't. I was taken to the hospital to be treated for a bad gash on the top of my head and small cuts all over my body. I had a mild concussion, but no severe injuries or any lasting effects. I took 16 staples to my scalp. My mother had to rush to the hospital to consent for them to treat me. They kept me overnight for observation and sent me home. When I told my mom about Christopher, she went sheet white and cried her eyes out. She refused to tell me why she reacted that way or who he was. Fast forward 5 years ago. I was just turning 33 when my son was born. You guessed it, I named him Christopher. When my mom came to meet him in the hospital, I asked her about that day. She told me 2 years before I was born, she got pregnant at 16. After only 2 months, her father basically forced her to have an abortion. She had said if that baby was a boy, she was going to name him Christopher. She said it broke her heart and she never forgave her dad after that. She never told anyone about it, and obviously didn't tell me either. I don't know where I went that day, or how that all works after we die. I know my heart stopped. As the lifeguard said, he didn't feel a pulse when he started CPR. I was dead for maybe a minute. There isn't a single day that goes by that I don't think about that day and my guardian older brother, Christopher. I never did get back in the ocean after that, but I know if I ever did, my brother would be there with me. This happened 7 years ago, and I still remember that feeling like it was yesterday. When I gave birth to my fourth and final baby, I had complications. He was a big baby, 22 inches long and 10 pounds, with very wide shoulders. He was stuck for a while at his shoulders, and the doctor had to use force to pull him out. He's totally okay now. When he was born, the nurses put him on my chest, my husband was by my side, and we were very, very happy. This is where things happened, and it happened fast. Within milliseconds, my son was gone from my chest, and my husband was being pushed away from my side as well. More nurses flooded in the room. They began telling me to push hard, and 2 additional nurses jumped on each side of the bed and began pushing on my stomach hard. I cried out in pain and remember seeing a nurse push my husband from the room. Every time the nurses pushed on my stomach, I felt and heard a massive gush of liquid come out of me. A nurse took my leg from the stirrup and asked me to hold it up, forgetting that I had an epidural and could not feel my leg. My leg dropped onto the bed and made a loud audible splash. Towels were being thrown on the ground around the bed. I didn't know what was going on. I cried out one last time when they pushed on me and heard one last gush. That's when the sound in the room disappeared. All the pain and feeling disappeared. I remember turning my head to look out the massive window in the room, even though it was nighttime and outside was dark. That's when I saw a light illuminating from behind a grouping of clouds, and it was getting brighter. Suddenly, no one was in the room with me. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I felt warm. I felt peace. I felt like I had been sent to do a job. My job was done, and now I am done. I could finally rest. My anxiety, fear, constant mild depression that was always with me that I shoved in some back place of my mind so I could function every day was completely gone. It was pure happiness. I forgot my husband, my other 3 kids at home, and my newborn, still in the room with me, even existed. Because somehow I knew they would be alright. I was ready. Then I felt like I was sucked right back to the cold and hurt, like someone dumping a bucket of ice water on you. The shock. Everything felt horrible again. My husband was sitting in the chair beside my bed. I was in a different room now, and it was morning. I was clean and wearing a new hospital gown. I was attached to several bags of IV fluid, one of them being blood. My husband would later tell me that he's not exactly sure what went on in the room after they pushed him out, but the gush of liquid that at the time I assumed was leftover amniotic fluids was actually blood. He said the bed was soaked in blood, and there was blood all over the floor. We were all okay and well now, but it took me 2 whole years to tell this story to my husband. Part of me is angry and holds resentment for being pulled back away from that feeling that I felt when I saw the light in the clouds at night. But mostly I'm living life to the fullest now, and I see so much beauty in things I never saw before. My mother was abusive and had been suffocating me with a pillow sporadically, beginning when I was 5. I was a screamer, and she would hold the pillow over my face until I quit struggling and went quiet. I learned to quit struggling very quickly. When I was 8, my older sister tattled on me for something, I don't recall what, and my mother slapped me and I began to scream. She then threw me on the bed and held the pillow over my face until I quit struggling. After she lifted the pillow, she left the room and I laughed and told my older sister that she could tattle if she wanted. I knew how to fake out our mother and she would quit before I passed out. Our mother was outside the door and heard me and came back in very angry, grabbed me and slammed my head against the bunk bed frame, dazing me and threw me down on the bed and put the pillow over my face again. Only this time she knelt on each side of my face, holding it in place as she screamed curses at me and punched and slapped the pillow. I went still and quiet in an attempt to make her believe that I passed out, but she did not let up, and I began scratching and hitting her legs to get her to let me go. Suddenly, I was no longer on the bed being suffocated. Instead, I was up by the ceiling, bouncing against the ceiling like a balloon. There was what appeared to be a silver, glowing, wide thread from me at the ceiling to me on the bed. I could see the event transpiring below me. I saw my mother kneeling over me with her knees on each side of my face, holding the pillow down. I could hear her cursing and screeching at me. I could see my younger sister sitting curled up in the corner at the foot of the bed, crying and shaking. I could see my older sister attempting to drag our mother off of me and hear her begging her to stop. As the ceiling above me became more and more transparent, I could see through it to a foggy white light area, and as the fog cleared, I could see several unknown, at the time, older people watching and looking very sad standing in the receding fog. I saw pictures of them later and they turned out to be my father's parents. I was just beginning to drift through the now very transparent ceiling when my mother quit suffocating me, threw the pillow across the room, and left, slamming the door. My older sister, she was 14, immediately went to me and began shaking me and calling my name. When I didn't respond, she pulled some flowers from a nearby vase and dumped the water on my face. When I still did not respond, she pulled me from the bed onto the floor and began pushing on my chest. She had recently learned what was called rescue breathing for drowning victims. She had made one attempt to do mouth-to-mouth when I saw an unknown man appear below me. He was stocky, balding with reddish hair, wearing a gold watch, and had a tattoo on one forearm. He reached up and touched what I perceived to be my big toe and said, "Now, it's not time for you to go yet. You have many important things to do," in an Irish accent. He then reached down and touched my big toe on my body, and I was immediately sucked down that glowing thread and back into my body. I woke up coughing and began to cry quietly. My entire personality changed after that. I became painfully shy. I couldn't stand to be looked at or spoken to or even noticed, especially in public. I quit crying and screaming. I seldom talked at all. I began taking myself away on daydreams constantly. I hid and played by myself in the forest. I had no friends for years. I had had thoughts that religions were false before the event and after. I just knew they were. My previous sense of knowing things became stronger, and over the years it has become stronger still. My mother never suffocated me after that. She found other ways to torture me. And my older sister never tattled on me ever again. I have had 13 dreams as an adult, wherein I experienced the death and crossing over of other people. Some of them I have known, and others I have never met. A few times I found reports of their deaths in the news or online. None of these dreams were pleasant. The Irishman showed up again at one point several years ago when I accidentally got poisoned and quit breathing several times. I was trying to walk towards a lake with a boat. I wanted to get into the boat, but he kept turning me away. I never lost consciousness, but I saw him nevertheless.